Going to go now to Doug McKelway, who is out in front of Trump Tower. Doug?
That's right, Arthel. This is pretty much what we had expected for the past several days, that Reince would be put in the chief of staff position. We're also hearing that Steve Bannon is going to hold a senior position within the White House staff there, probably as senior counselor to the president. These are two people who Donald Trump is very, very fond of. I hearken back to election night in the wee hours of the morning. It must have been 3 o'clock in the morning or so when Donald Trump came out on that stage and he singled out Reince Priebus in the crowd, asked him to come up on stage and say a few words. It was a measure of his fondness for him. If you hearken back to what Reince Priebus was facing in the early stages of this campaign, there was tremendous opposition to Donald Trump. Across the establishment board of Republicanism in Washington, there was a view that Donald Trump could not win this election. Yet Reince Priebus stuck by him. He did what he had to do as chairman of the RNC and supported the candidate, providing him all kinds of advice, all kinds of data, which ultimately led to Donald Trump winning this election. And then Steve Bannon, on the other hand, also, we saw very little of him during the campaign. He was always behind the scenes, kept a very, very low profile. It was Kellyanne Conway who was out there in front of the TV cameras. But Kellyanne Conway told Chris Wallace just this morning that Steve Bannon was the general of this campaign. He orchestrated the campaign in that sense. The guy has vast experience, and as much as he is portrayed as I've said, a flamethrower of the alt-right movement, he has vast experience, both as a commander in the U.S. Navy. That's a wonderful thing to be doing when you're working at the White House and facing all kinds of incoming fire. He was also an executive at Goldman Sachs. He was a successful Hollywood movie producer. And, of course, he's a successful publisher of the Breitbart website right now. So he's got vast experience. Two of these guys are going to be major players in the Trump administration.
You know, Doug, you have two distinct, separate personalities when you deal between Priebus and Bannon. But the Tea Party patriots and some conservatives are really against Reince Priebus. I mean, they would look at him and say, well, he's the typical, insider. He served 3 terms as the chairman of the Republican National Committee, was chairman of the Wisconsin Republican Party. You know, and some of them, you think they'll be disappointed, or you think they'll say, look, Donald Trump, who spent his life in the building behind you, is going to really need some veteran Washington hands who know how to pull the lever of power and know where the bathrooms are and the closets are in the Capitol to get things done.
Right, and there's Reince Priebus for you right there. The guy has really sound judgment. He kept his composure throughout all the firing of ammo at Donald Trump throughout the summertime. He kept his wits about him and supported Donald Trump. You also have a little bit of this component of good cop, bad cop. You have Reince Priebus on the one hand, and you have Steve Bannon on the other hand, who is an outsider and who, according to some reports, is not fond of many establishment Republicans, including Paul Ryan. So ultimately, the decision-making in this administration comes from the head guy, Donald Trump. He's got to hear that advice, and it sounds like from the way he's set things up now, he's going to hear both sides of it, from Reince Priebus and from Steve Bannon.
Yeah, and, you know, Doug, of course, everybody's watching this transition very closely. You've got Donald Trump's supporters who made a very strong outcry for newness, if you will, in D.C. How do you think this is going to resonate with them, that Reince Priebus is more, as we've been pointing out, he's more of the establishment?
Well, you've got players from both perspectives in this. If you look at the entire transition team, you see the dynamic at work here. This is sort of, perhaps in some respects, a blueprint of how the administration will be stacked up. You've got, as the chairman of the transition committee, the vice president-elect Mike Pence, who, as I described earlier, has a reputation as a social conservative. He's a very soft-spoken man, always keeps his wits about him. He has a lot of inside Washington connections by virtue of the fact that he was a congressman from Indiana. He also has that outside perspective now. He is the governor of the state of Indiana. And then you look below that, in addition to those major players, you have some really key personnel who have nothing to do with politics until this campaign got underway, and that's the Trump family. Eric Trump, Donald Jr., Ivanka, and then his son-in-law, Jared Kushner. These people are going to be playing major roles, and they're the kinds of people who are going to be weighing the perspective, weighing the advice from guys like Reince Priebus and Steve Bannon and many, many others, filtering it out and giving it to their father and to their loved one. That's where the real honest advice comes from as well.
Yeah, you obviously, and any of the chief executive generally would say you always need someone there who is not just a yes man. It seems like Reince Priebus will not be in that model. And now that we have this staff announcement, yeah, Doug?
No, I was just going to, and someone who's looking out for the best interests of, in this case, their father.
That's true, in terms of the family. Doug McElwee, live outside Trump Tower. If we get any more live pictures of either Reince Priebus or Steve Bannon, if there's a news conference, we will bring that to you, of course, in a moment.